The air was thick with the golden warmth of a late summer afternoon when Emma Carter leaned against the metal railing of the old airfield, her laughter echoing under the vast blue sky. She never imagined that one offhand joke would turn her world upside down. "Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you," she teased, her voice full of lightness, pointing at the dust-covered army chopper parked at the far end of the hangar. But the man beside her, a quiet veteran with weathered hands and a heavy heart, didn't laugh. He simply looked at her, eyes deep as dusk, and said, "All right." And then he started the engine. "If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected love, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal." These real stories remind us that sometimes love takes flight when we least expect it. Emma met Noah Briggs in the most unplanned way imaginable. She was a freelance travel journalist, writing about small-town aviation museums in northern Colorado, chasing stories that barely paid the rent but filled her soul. He was the new mechanic at the airfield, a single dad who rarely smiled but worked with precision and calm, as though his hands were guided by something sacred. First time she saw him, he was kneeling beside an old Huey helicopter, oil stains darkening his gray T-shirt, his face half hidden under a sun-bleached cap. There was something unshakable about him, a quiet gravity that drew her in. Over the next few days, Emma found excuses to talk to him. She'd linger after interviews, ask about his tools, pretend to take extra photos. Each time, Noah answered softly, never volunteering much, but always polite. She learned he'd served in Afghanistan for over a decade, that he'd flown helicopters for the army, that he'd lost friends, too many of them, and that he was raising his 7-year-old daughter, Rosie, on his own. What she didn't know was that every night he'd tuck Rosie into bed, stare out the window of their small apartment above the airfield office, and wonder if he'd ever learn how to live without feeling like a broken compass. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the joke happened. The sky was spotless, the kind of day where the horizon melted into endless light. Emma was finishing her article and wanted a few photos of the old helicopter for her story. She called Noah over, teasing him about the chopper that hadn't flown in years. "Come on," she said, laughing as she climbed onto the side step. "If you can get this thing off the ground, I'll marry you right now." She didn't mean it, of course. It was just one of those playful lines people throw into the air without thinking. But Noah didn't smile. He looked at her with quiet intensity, then walked around the aircraft, running his hand along the side as though reacquainting himself with an old friend. When he climbed into the pilot's seat, Emma's laughter faded. The engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. The blades began to spin, slicing the sunlight into trembling streaks. The sound was deafening, wild, alive. Emma stumbled back, heart racing, watching in disbelief as the machine shuddered with power. For the first time in years, Noah was home again, in the air, with purpose in his veins, but he didn't take off. He just sat there, eyes closed, breathing deeply, tears glinting on his lashes. Emma's shock melted into something deeper. She saw it then, the way his hands trembled slightly, how his face softened into both pain and peace. When he shut down the engine, the world seemed to still. He stepped out, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Guess that means you owe me a ring," he said quietly, almost smiling for the first time. And though she laughed again, there was something different in her laughter now, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. From that day, Emma couldn't stop thinking about him. Her story turned from an article into an obsession. She visited the airfield daily, bringing coffee, asking questions, learning about his missions and the friends he'd lost. The more she learned, the more she understood the weight Noah carried. His helicopter crew had gone down during a rescue mission in 2017. He survived, but 3 of his closest brothers didn't. He blamed himself for every second of it. Since then, he hadn't flown, not even once, until that afternoon when she made that careless joke. Emma's visits became a lifeline, not just for him, but for Rosie too. The little girl adored her, drawing pictures of helicopters and giving them as thank-you gifts. Noah watched them together from a distance, something thawing in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. But old wounds don't heal easily. Some nights Emma would find him alone in the hangar, sitting in the dark, fingers pressed to the helicopter's body as if it were a gravestone. One evening, as the sunset bled orange across the horizon, Emma approached him quietly. "You still blame yourself," she whispered, standing behind him. He didn't answer, just stared at the sky. "Noah," she said softly, "you kept your promise. You brought them home. That's what matters." He turned to her, eyes wet, voice raw. "I didn't bring all of them home." The silence that followed was heavy, but Emma didn't look away. She placed her hand on his arm and said something that would echo in his heart long after that night. "Then maybe now it's time to start bringing yourself home." Over the next few weeks they grew closer, slowly, carefully. Emma introduced him to laughter again. Rosie started calling her Em. They'd have picnics by the hangar, chase paper airplanes, and watch the stars come out one by one. The town started whispering about them, the war hero and the journalist, but Noah didn't care. For the first time in years, he was smiling again. Then came the offer that tested everything. A local aviation school reached out, asking Noah to teach flight safety to new recruits. It was the kind of opportunity that could give him purpose again, but also the one thing he feared most, getting back into the air for real. The thought of flying again terrified him. He told Emma he couldn't do it. "I'm done flying," he said one night, sitting on the hangar floor beside her. "I can't go back up there. I don't deserve to." Emma looked at him quietly, heart breaking for him, then whispered, "You don't have to fly for the past, Noah. Fly for the future. Fly for Rosie." Those words stayed with him. Days passed. He didn't answer the school's offer. Then, one bright Saturday morning, Emma heard the unmistakable hum of rotors. She ran to the airfield and froze. The helicopter was in the air, just a few feet off the ground, steady and sure. Noah was inside, eyes forward, hands strong. Rosie stood beside Emma, waving wildly. When he landed, the crowd that had gathered clapped, but Emma just stood there, tears streaming down her cheeks. He climbed out, walked toward her slowly, and smiled, really smiled this time. "You once said you'd marry me if I flew this thing," he said softly, brushing her hair from her face. "Well, I just did." She laughed through tears, shaking her head. "You remembered that?" He nodded. "I remember everything you say." Their wedding wasn't fancy. It was held a few months later, right there in the hangar, surrounded by friends, veterans, and Rosie in a white dress with butterfly wings. Noah had traded his flight uniform for a simple gray suit, but when he looked at Emma walking down the aisle, she swore the whole world stilled again. Just like that first day he started the engine. He never became a flight instructor. Instead, he opened a small foundation for veterans, teaching them mechanical and aviation skills to rebuild their confidence. Emma wrote their story for a magazine, not as a love story, but as a story of healing, resilience, and the courage to take off again after you've crashed. And sometimes, when the day was clear and the sky endless, Noah would take Emma and Rosie up in the helicopter he rebuilt, flying low over the fields, the sound of the blades blending with their laughter. "You still think that joke was funny?" He'd ask with a grin, and Emma would smile, reaching for his hand. "Funniest thing I ever said. Because love, like flight, isn't about escaping the ground. It's about finding the courage to rise again, no matter how heavy the past feels." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. It helps Kindness Journal bring more real, emotional stories of hope and second chances to people who need them. Before you go, tell us in the comments, Would you take a leap of faith for love, even after being broken? And as the golden sun set over that quiet airfield, the sound of one helicopter rose again, not as a reminder of loss, but as a promise of healing, of love reborn, and of the beautiful truth that sometimes a simple joke can change everything.